Welcome to the very first video of the Cinematic Century Chronicle, a YouTube channel where I'll be watching and reflecting on at least one film from every year between 1920 and 2020. Along the way, we'll dive into film history, rediscover forgotten gems, and revisit some of the classics that helped shape cinema as we know it. To kick things off, we're starting with one of the most influential films ever made, The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. Just a heads up, this video contains spoilers. If you haven't watched The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, go check it out and come back. More than 100 years have passed since Caligari first lit up the screen in 1920, and somehow it still feels fresh. It's eerie, stylish, and psychologically intense, with a visual and emotional boldness that continues to leave an impression. Caligari is a cinematic breakthrough, one that challenged how stories could be told, how visuals could behave, and how the mind itself could be portrayed on screen. Today, we explore why The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari still matters over a century later. The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari didn't just tell a strange story, it looked like one. The sets were crooked, the shadows were painted, walls leaned, windows twisted, and reality itself bent to the madness of the characters. This was German Expressionism, a movement that threw realism out the window and instead visualized emotion. Want to show anxiety? Tilt the buildings. Want to show madness? Shatter the sets. Want to reveal that the world isn't quite right? Paint it that way. In Caligari, the production design wasn't just a backdrop, it was the mindset of the characters. A century later, we still feel its influence, from Tim Burton to Guillermo del Toro. One of my favorite sets is the one where Francis's fiancée lives. Notice the curvy lines and lace used in the set design. It's a real contrast to the more jagged and twisted look of the rest of the film, almost like a pocket of gentleness inside a nightmare. There's also a frame that always sticks with me. Right after the first murder, the camera lingers on a window shaped like a dagger pointing down at the victim. It's a chilling little detail. The architecture itself feels complicit. Another detail that stands out is the depth of the carnival set. There's a matte painting of the town in the background, a middle ground where people move up and down the stairs, and the foreground where the main action unfolds. These layered elements combine to sell the illusion of a bustling, chaotic space, a surreal but convincing world. This is probably one of the first films to play with the idea of the unreliable narrator. We start with a man named Francis, telling a story about the sinister Dr. Caligari and his sleepwalker, Cesare, who's being used to commit murders. It seems like a straightforward tale of a good guy chasing a bad guy. By the end, we discover that Francis may be an asylum patient, and Caligari, the evil doctor he feared, may actually be his psychiatrist. You find out the whole thing might have been a delusion. Francis might be the one who's mentally unstable. Suddenly, everything you just watched is up for interpretation. It's ambiguous, unnerving, and makes us question everything we thought we understood. An unreliable narrator and a reality-shattering reveal would become a staple of modern storytelling, echoed in films like Fight Club, Shutter Island, and The Sixth Sense. And amidst all this narrative uncertainty, Friedrich Fehr's performance as Francis provides an emotional anchor. While many performances in the film lean toward theatrical exaggeration, Fehr plays Francis with surprising restraint. His grounded, human presence helps sell the story's sincerity, even as the world around him becomes increasingly surreal. That quiet intensity adds to the power of the film's twist, because we're not just watching a story unravel, we're watching him unravel with it. Beneath the shadows and angular sets, The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari reflects a deep unease with power, control, and manipulation. Dr. Caligari, the figure of authority, uses his influence to manipulate Cesare, a sleepwalker, into committing murder. The idea of a passive body being controlled by a forceful will taps into anxieties about obedience, institutional power, and the loss of autonomy. This theme resonates particularly strongly when you consider the historical context. Released just 2 years after the end of World War I, Caligari reflects a time of deep uncertainty in Germany. The country was grappling with trauma, political instability, and a growing distrust of leadership. The film's atmosphere of paranoia and distortion mirrors those anxieties. Caligari channels that unease into its narrative. We have a figure who presents himself as respectable, but acts in secret. There's a system that confuses truth and illusion, and a world where madness and authority blur together. What makes the film enduring is that these concerns haven't gone away. Whether you read it as a critique of authoritarianism, psychological coercion, or institutional power, Caligari still offers a chilling allegory not just for Germany in the 1920s, but for any era wrestling with the abuse of influence and the fragility of perception. Before Caligari, most movies tried to imitate real life. Sets looked like real rooms, lighting was functional, and stories were told in a straight line. Cinema was still figuring itself out, and for the most part, it played things safe. Of course, there were exceptions. George Méliès had already shown that movies could be fantastical, like in A Trip to the Moon, but his films felt like magic shows. Caligari took that visual freedom and pushed it somewhere darker. It didn't care about realism, it cared about mood. About madness, the painted sets, the tilted walls, the impossible architecture. It all creates a feeling, not a place. Watching it feels like being inside someone's dream or nightmare. This was a turning point. Filmmakers realized they could stylize. They could bend the world to fit the story. The goal wasn't to copy life. It was to express something deeper. You can draw a straight line from Caligari to Metropolis, Blade Runner, even the Grand Budapest Hotel, films that use space, color, and geometry not just as background, but as mood, meaning, and metaphor. Now let's talk about Cesare, the sleepwalker. He's tall, pale, with dark eyes and a stiff puppet-like walk. He's basically the blueprint for dozens of horror characters, like zombies, vampires, ghost children, and silent slashers. But the really scary part? He's not evil. He's being controlled. He's a victim. That idea, being robbed of your free will, is terrifying, and horror hasn't let go of it. Whether it's possession, mind control, cults, or psychological manipulation, it's a fear that still works. And the actor who played him, Conrad Veidt, would go on to become one of Germany's most celebrated silent film stars. But his legacy didn't end there. In the 1930s, he fled Nazi Germany after marrying a Jewish woman and refusing to work under the regime. He eventually moved to Hollywood, where he played the villainous Major Strasser in Casablanca. A man who once portrayed a pawn of authoritarian control in Caligari, Veidt later stood firmly against it in real life. Back in 1920, a lot of people still saw movies as light entertainment. Something fun, but not exactly art. Caligari helped change that perception. It was provocative, stylized, and deeply layered. For many critics and intellectuals, it became one of the first films recognized as art, something worthy of serious interpretation and cultural discussion. Its reception helped lay the foundation for the idea that film could be as expressive and intellectually rich as any other art form, and even American censors, who initially rejected the film for being too disturbing or because of lingering post-war anti-German sentiment, couldn't stop its reputation from growing. In a lot of ways, Caligari is one of those movies that helped open the door for film to be studied, analyzed, and respected. The cabinet of Dr. Caligari may be over 100 years old, but it's still alive in the shadows of modern cinema. It's one of the first films to explore madness, manipulate narrative, experiment with set design, and take a stand. It paved the way for horror, for stylization, and for cinema as an intellectual medium. It's weird. It's stylized. It's kind of sad. And somehow, it still feels modern by today's standards. It haunts us because it showed what movies could be. Poetic, political, and profoundly strange. If you've never seen it, I highly recommend it. Our next stop is 1921, and a film that proved silent cinema could make you laugh and cry in the same breath. The Kid is up next. This is just the beginning of our journey through a century of cinema. Subscribe and join me as we chronicle the course of 100 years of film. Until next time, have a great rest of your day.